Going on with our trading partners, tariffs and the trade war, has the United States reached any agreements with our key trading partners thus far? And what impact will tariffs have on your daily expenses? Will we begin to see items that aren't on the shelf in the stores we frequent in a daily basis? In this video, I give you the full update. We'll also examine how long it actually takes to negotiate trade agreements. Is it possible for this to occur within a few weeks or months, or does this require a lot more time? Additionally, I'll show you which products will be most impacted by tariffs. Indeed, this will have an impact on you when you start seeing bare shelves in stores. This might actually happen in the coming weeks. Now, let's listen to Bill Ackman. He has more information and updates regarding the situation, because he is a Trump insider. Believe that the economy's inflation has mostly been squeezed out, correct? Egg costs, energy prices, in my opinion, are declining and will continue to do so. And it's clearly very, very positive for the economy, in my opinion. What else can I say? So what are your thoughts on the possible effects of tariffs on inflation? In my opinion, if they are finally resolved, the price of some things will go up by a percentage, but this is more of a one-time adjustment than a compounding effect of inflation. After that, there won't be any significant inflation, and consider it as a backdrop against which the Federal Reserve may begin to implement a couple different rate decreases by the end of the year. I believe they ought to start cutting right away. A little cut very soon, in my opinion, makes sense because, as you may know, we profited in Q1 from some front loading of purchases in case of tariffs. The ambiguity around what is essentially Liberation Day, the GDP of the United States increased by almost 2.5% in the fourth quarter of 2024, the first quarter of the Trump administration, due to the trade war, tariffs, and other issues. The United States GDP actually shrank, going negative by 0.3%. Therefore, we were headed for a positive 3% GDP growth in the first quarter. And the trade war, which began in April, caused everything to fall apart. Additionally, to provide you with some background, considering the stock market, I am aware that many of us do not have any investments in it, but many people use it as a gauge of the state of the economy. The stock market experienced one of its worst Aprils since 1932, albeit that's not exactly one of the indicators you should be watching. Additionally, if you have heard of the Great Depression, you are aware that 1932 was the start of it. It began in 1929, and for many people, 1932 was an extremely difficult year. Additionally, I hope that we avoid experiencing another depression. I think it's important that the tariffs be resolved in the relatively short term, because I do believe that if we're still dealing with it, and the tariff issue is still making headlines, then let me ask you a tariff question. I know Joe has a question about Harvard that he wants to ask, but on the tariff front, sure, replace has caused many businesses to pause and wait to see what's going to happen, and that's going to be reflected in Q2. What does it mean when you state that it gets resolved? In other words, do you think that the US government will make a lot of money as a result of the high tariffs? Are we blinking and claiming that the market enjoys the fact that we won't be implementing the tariffs we've been discussing all along, and that this is a resolution? When someone says resolved, what do we mean? Yes. Trump, in my opinion, has drawn attention to our allies' unfair trade practices and trade imbalances worldwide. When you declare tariffs on China of 145% and extremely high duties against the rest of the globe, that is what occurs, he stated. Okay, we're going to pause for 90 days on basically everyone except China, because China responded after accomplishing that. Therefore, we will effectively punish them. Deals with our main trading partners became possible as a result. When hammering out arrangements, Scott Bisson points out that we have 18 countries, including the top 18 in the European Union. We must treat China in the same manner. My point against China has been made, but a 145% tariff on China means we will no longer do business with them. It has significant bad effects on the United States, starting with small businesses, sticking with move for second, and others, but it also has extremely negative effects on China, even more so than on us. I believe that pausing on China is the appropriate thing to do. We should wait a bit longer. We're going to be busy here, so it might be 180 days. The result is a stabilization of the risk to the US economy and small companies nationwide. However, China is now very motivated to negotiate. Why? Due to the likelihood for heavy tariffs on China and the shock of 145%. Every business that manufactures in China and sells to the US is shifting its supply chains to another location. The longer it takes to reach an agreement, and the longer these tariffs and unfair trade practices against China continue, the more likely it is that China will lose all of those businesses. Okay, so let me actually complete the sentence. I don't think the current situation is optimal for the US because of the economic pressure that China tariffs are putting on the US. After a 180-day respite, the economic pressure is lifted from US, but because everyone is departing, it still exists in China. Businesses are already departing China because they simply do not know how this situation will turn out. For example, Apple is relocating all of its operations to India. Just a small percentage of iPhones were manufactured in India in 2020. Last year, 20% of all iPhones were manufactured in India. In just a year or two, all iPhones will be made in India by 2026. Since a large portion of this is factory employment that will leave workers without jobs, China's people will face catastrophic issues. Furthermore, China is already experiencing a slump as a result of the real estate market losing 78% of its value as a result of the mismanagement of some very large Chinese real estate companies. Everything was wrecked by the abuse, destroyed the value of real estate. People are already in shock about that. Include this in the mixture. Baby, gunpowder, it's not good. Additionally, this is, according to President Trump, he has no intention of meeting with President Xi of China. As of May 4th, it is an update. Japan is another. Their bid for complete exemption from reciprocal tariffs has been denied. Japan's plea for full exemption has been denied by the US. Japan then declared it desired to be completely free from tariffs. No, not good. The United States said. So let's get a better idea. What is the current state of trade agreements in the US? Have we struck any agreements yet? What's going on? Let's get started. Under Donald Trump, the United States will impose wide reciprocal tariffs in April 2025, a universal 10% duty on all imports with higher country-specific and product-specific rates for important partners, and a 90-day moratorium on the majority of the new tariffs until July 9th, 2025. Trump therefore placed most of these nations on a 90-day halt. All right. How long do you think it takes to put together a trade deal? That's the difficult part. Would you be surprised then if I told you that it might take between 1.5 and 3.5 years? Take a listen. Depending on how complicated the agreement is, negotiating a trade, Pat can take anything from a few months to many years. I take it that we are now discussing renegotiating the entire matter, everything. Bits and pieces are not it. It's crucial. On average, a trade deal lasts between 1.5 and 3.5 years. Given that a single agreement might take months or even years, I'm not sure how the Trump administration hopes to close 30 or 20 deals in 90 days. The tariffs look like this, to give you a clearer idea of what's going to happen. Trump has put a halt to several of his duties on our largest trading partners, and we'll have to wait until July to see what he does. By July 9th, nothing has been settled. All of these commodities are subject to these tariffs, and the US economy is going to suffer greatly as a result. Everything is already moving very slowly as a result of this. We have to figure this out as soon as possible. The United States is negotiating with dozens of nations, but it is anticipated that most of these agreements will be narrowly focused and limited to particular products and areas, so may not all be settled. Since the government is not likely to prolong the 90-day tariff break, tariffs may resume in July. That is a serious issue. That is an enormous issue. They will retaliate if they are unable to figure out 40 or 50 trade accords in 90 days. The new tariffs do not apply to books or other information materials. Dope. Amazingly cool. After that, it discusses various tariffs